to 207 Cross, Banyan Point office.
did.
I finally got in there to do an
Good.
inspection.
Mine says 9.
Yeah, mine, it says 2 slides, the galley.
Now it says 9 o'clock.
Or dining room and the bedroom, master bedroom.
Findings are after reading.
Good morning. We'll bring this special meeting of the city's Development Review Committee to order, please. Can we have a quick roll call?
Linda Esposito,
Present.
Norman Nara,
Present.
Jennifer Molnar,
Present.
Tom Jackson,
Here.
Randy Cole,
Yes.
Austin Mitchell, or
Present.
Miss Mitchell Austin. Sorry.
I'll answer to either, just don't call me late for dinner. Okay, so, let's see, we need to do citizens' comments, I guess, to be correct for this meeting. So if anybody has any comments, okay, hearing none. Are we doing minutes for this? Approval minutes, we didn't have anything.
There's
Yes,
nothing to
yes,
approve,
it's
nothing was
just the-
distributed.
Yeah, okay. So we need to talk about this lovely right-of-way closure issue. Discussion regarding new business of a process or standard operating procedure for handling road closures, specifically on urban collector streets within the city. We had an issue with traffic getting out of hand and the closure of Olympia Avenue for one project. So we need to discuss how we need to handle these things moving forward, so that we don't have these issues arise, and that there are not this level of surprise within the community.
Can I ask a question? I know I'm out of order, but would you mind telling me?
Can you go up to the podium,
Just
just so we can
go to
have
the
it on?
podium.
Okay, thank you.
Please. And you may.
Kathy Getz, District 1. Can you please tell me what incident you are referring to, which event?
So there was, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't handle single-family home permits, so I have no earthly idea. There was a road closure associated with a utility line installation that crossed West Olympia Avenue between Pittman and Shreve, I believe, and that necessitated a complete road closure and detour for West Olympia Avenue. So
Can I ask
that
a
is
question, Mitch?
incident.
So who brought this subject forward?
So this was at the request of the city manager's office, that we
Okay.
discuss how we should handle this in terms of making sure that this doesn't occur again. And right now, I mean, from urban design's perspective, these are typically handled through the building permit process because they're single-family homes or other such structures that don't require any sort of zoning review. So
Okay.
we don't know where to go with this.
For
Well,
to discuss the permitting.
what is the chief complaint regarding the road closure?
Here, I'll tell, look, can I speak? I was not
Yeah.
here, but I was brought up to speed on this. Apparently, they called at the last minute and said they needed an officer for traffic control,
Who's they?
the contractor. We got one officer. Well, because of the location and the way traffic was being rerouted, it became a nightmare. And then the second day, we ended up bringing in more officers. So we want to know ahead of time that this is going to be happening so that not just the city can put on their social media, but police department and whatever social media we have to alert the public. We could do, a press release so that maybe people reroute themselves a different way, which would minimize traffic. And two, we would like to examine exactly where it's at and how we're gonna have that officer direct the traffic to determine whether they're required to have one extra duty detail officer or two or even three. Especially with only having 4 officers on the road, we had to take one off to go work that, and now that leaves 3, and that leaves our citizens, our businesses.
Basically, you're
unprotected,
saying
basically.
a maintenance of traffic plan and advance notification regarding any type of road detour.
Right.
Right, and I think the chief, what the chief was thinking was to have like something like this go in front of DRC so that even FD can review it and be like, well, we're not, if we have an emergency right there, we're not gonna be able to get there, you have to do this.
Understood.
You know, so that's the whole purpose of it, is not just the advancement of it, but to be able to plan rather than have an officer just show up and be like, okay, I'm gonna route them this way, because that's all that officer is given. We don't have any information on it. And also nighttime and daytime to see if they could do things after hours, or, you know, because the contractor said he would have been able to do this after hours, which would have minimized this traffic issue. But being there that day, it wouldn't have been unfair to him, because it would have cost him thousands of dollars to redo everything at that time.
Understood.
So we're clear, this is not part of the single-family permitting. When it's off-site, I believe that would move over to Public Works purview. And I assume you guys have some kind of a procedure?
If I could, Mark Gehring, Public Works. This recent project that we're talking about is when this all came to light. But it shows some serious weaknesses in our ability to regulate road closures. The gentleman came to my office 3 days before he planned to start his work with a major closure of Olympia Avenue, and said that it was a utility project. So we naturally blamed it all on utilities. It's a utility project. We said, why didn't you get this all worked out with utilities? And utilities saying, whoa, it's just a simple connection for us. It's really not a utilities project. And we got to looking at it, and we don't have a process for road closures. We address a lot of them in DRC for special events and those kinds of things. For major projects that we're doing, either Public Works or utilities, we understand how to go about a road closure. But when a developer comes in, either through DRC or not through DRC, as such as these single-family homes, there's not a good process for them to understand how to close a road in the city of Punta Gorda. So I've looked at various other cities, communities, counties, and they all have very structured approaches how to do this, usually through the Public Works Department as the lead, but it goes through police, fire, school board, all those different agencies to make sure that they can continue to perform their services and give everybody enough time to review it, understand what's going to happen, and make some alternative plans. The contractors seem to think that they needed a 3-day notice here. 3 days notice to close Olympia, and that 3 days covering a weekend doesn't do it. That was probably, it's a bad example, but it's probably the worst closure we could have had in the city of Punta Gorda. Most everything else you can get around without, you may impact a block of traffic with, if you have diverted all of Marion's traffic, or excuse me, all of Olympia's traffic to Virginia, people in Virginia are going to have a lot of discomfort, but the traffic can get around. With what was happening at this Olympia closure last week was just, as I understand it, it shut down traffic in all of Punta Gorda Isles, all the way out to Akiastan 41, Henry, everything. So.
May I? As far as public information goes, as a project manager, I know with any construction work that we generally do for public information, I'll request it anywhere from 10 to 2 weeks advance notice so that we can at least advise the public. And that was also missing.
Yes, so once we figure out if a road closure is good and how we're going to do it, and everybody's in agreement that we're going to do it, we have to have some sort of noticing procedure. This past week, the ad went in with my name and phone number on it. We have to give somebody's name and phone number, so I took the hit for that. I've got dozens and dozens of calls, as well as everybody else in the city, of why did we choose this time to close that road? And why did we pick that project? And why couldn't we do something different? I didn't have any answers for any of that. It's a developer, he needs to connect sewer to his new home that's darn near complete. I don't know if he's ready for CO yet or not, but he's very close to it. So we just need to, as a group, figure out what's the best way to catch these that don't come to DRC, or at the time of DRC aren't finalized enough to know exactly what they're going to do as far as the road closure, so that we capture that and address it properly and don't get caught short like we did last week.
You know, and to add what he's saying, whenever we have road closures, whether it's Sandra's Oktoberfest or a parade or St. Patty's Day, Public Works, myself and Dave Meyer sit down, and he basically says, this is how we're routing traffic, and then we determine whether, you know, we need to have an officer there or whatever. I think we should just continue, keep that pattern going for every event. So if something like this is happening, you know, I'm not a road closure guy. It's something I'm, you know, expertise. So Dave Myers would sit down with me and explain this is the best way he thinks we could route traffic. And, you know, I'll look at it and agree, because it probably is, and then we'll determine where we need to place officers and how many they have to have. And then, of course, you can alert, you know, the public, like we do with parades, we do, you know, media releases, things like that. You know, I like to see some consistency in how we do this. We shouldn't have one procedure for an event and then when it's the exact same thing.
We do a lot of projects, we being utilities, where in fact, the majority of, one of the reasons this took everyone by surprise is it's very unusual to do a sewer ring project in the city limits, because the city limits, for the most part, is sewered, and there are connections to lots. A lot of this comes about when lot splits happen and they have to develop new sewering to lots because a lot split has been allowed, or the reduction to the 50-foot lots. The platted sewers in the city of Punta Gorda were platted and developed, and the sewers were built to 100-foot lots. Once we cut those lots in half, guess what? One of the lots doesn't have a sewer, so we're going to see more of this taking place. If Steve or Robert or one of you guys would like to talk about, we do a lot of this with the county, and it's seamless with the county because they have a very strict process. If you guys want to hear about how the county does it. Steve, you want to speak to that, or?
Sure. Steve Adams, Utilities. This was a developer project, as you all know. So a developer wants to do a new project, and sometimes they have to do off-site work to extend a water line or a sewer line into the new project area. This has frequently happened out in our service area outside of the city limits. I'm not exactly sure what the contractor has to do, but they just go to the Public Works Director or the Public Works Department. In this case, I think it's Roy Benjamin, and they submit an MOT plan. Once Roy's approved it, the contractor is responsible for everything. He has to do the notification, he has to call the barricade company, set up all the barricades, and nobody even touches that stuff. The only people that touch that is the contractor.
And the county will dictate when the project can be done. You can't run into the county and say, oh, Shazam, I got approval a year ago, but now I got my CO, and I need my CO next week. Well, sorry about your luck. You had 11 months and 3 weeks to get this done. So we're going to tell you when you can do it. And I think the city's in that same situation. We get to dictate the timetable if we're going to close a road.
So for instance, we just did, I don't know, the Jones Loop Force Main, which was a city project, but it was in the county right away, and our contractor had to go to Charlotte County Public Works and get an MOT plan approved and put up cones and barricades, and in some cases, close lanes to build the project. It was totally seamless because our contractor went directly to Roy Benjamin, got a permit, put up the necessary devices, and built the project. So that's how they do it.
Can you help me understand the county process? Okay, so the contractor goes to the building department within the county. The county then works with whoever they need to within the building department and also the utility division. And if the county specifies that the contractor is to do all this stuff, isn't there a project manager or someone, or the building department or someone who talks about this, maybe in a pre-construction meeting or the permitting requirements or something relating to maintenance of traffic, the advertising, the plan, basically? How does that work within the county?
Oh, as I just described, the contractor goes to the county and submits an MOT plan
The building
That would-
department or?
to the county Public Works Department, which in this case is Roy Benjamin. Roy Benjamin reports directly to the county engineer, Joanne Vernon. She has the authority. She's delegated it partially to Roy, and of course, Roy can get direction from her as needed. So the contractor goes directly to Roy Benjamin in the Public Works Department and gets his right-of-way permit, including MOT, approved. It's a drawing with very specific information as to where the barricades are going, what time they're allowed to be up, all that. Very specific, detailed plan. Once it's approved, contractor implements what's on that drawing. And if necessary, closes lanes and does work per the approved plan. Roy Benjamin has field staff that will go out and look at the project from time to time,
Well, they
not
have a
full-time.
standard operating procedure then in place where we have a missing link.
They do have a procedure for right-of-way
That's what I'm
permits.
saying. I just wanted Steve to describe the process.
Yeah, and I don't know people, I don't know their names, so that's why I was
They have,
asking about the.
they have staff that's assigned to each and every permit that has to go and inspect it at least once at closeout, but on bigger projects, every day. And that's how they protect the public from a contractor doing something in the right of way that might be, unpleasant or unharmful. Like if they did an excavation and they didn't fill it back in, that's a potential hazard. Plus, it's an extra cost for Public Works to have to do that with their own staff later on to go make that restoration and sod it. So they have a right-of-way permit for anybody who touches the right-of-way, period.
Right.
No matter what they're doing.
We-
And they come out and do a final on every single permit and look at it and see if the work was at least restored. Now, projects where there's MOT, they actually will send staff out, and supervise the work to obtain compliance with their requirement. It was a utility, in our case, it was a utility project, so Roy's people would come out to look at the MOT, but not tell us how to build the utility work. That was our job, because the contractor's working for us, it's our utility facility. But we have nothing to do with the MOT or the lane closure, that was all done by the county staff.
This permitting is separate from the building or construction permit for the site.
Right.
Because it's off-site connection or utility work or other type of road work. So the inspections, as Steve stated, I guess would need to be done by whatever party governs that, whether it's utilities or road work or sidewalk work or that. So I guess we just simply need a procedure. And for buildings part, we can take care of making sure the contractors are all notified that there is a specific procedure and a timeline for doing it.
It's a matter of developing that procedure. And the contractor shouldn't get blindsided either, just like we shouldn't, of what their requirements are to develop a maintenance of traffic plan or bring it to the city, and to whom they should bring it in an advanced timeline of a notification, so everybody has, whoever needs to, has an opportunity to review it and approve it prior to implementation, and also advance notice to the public.
And I think we already have personnel in place for that.
No, I know, but we don't have the procedure.
Exactly, that's why I would suggest they develop their
We
procedure.
talked
that-
about, we met, Mark and Utilities and Public Works met and sat down and brainstormed this, and Mark's got some great ideas of things we need. So,
Go ahead.
Mark Gehring, Public Works again, if I could. As we were talking about this, we also brought up the utilities of telephone and cable and power, which we do not see whatsoever when they make a road closure. For instance, Marion was closed all this week, one lane. Had we been planning some other work, or some other utility had planned to close Marion Avenue left lane, who knows what would have happened there? You know, two people show up to close the same road, opposite lanes, something. We have no tracking whatsoever for who's closing roads. We get calls on the phone, what's happening on Marion? I don't know. We send a person out there. Hey, who is this? What are they doing? And the way the utilities are working nowadays, you see the subcontractors' trucks, you don't even know what utility it is doing the work, because it's not FPL and it's not CenturyLink doing the work. It's all these other subcontractors that are doing the work. So we have to find somebody that speaks English, knows what the job is, and can actually tell us who's doing this work and what they're doing.
I have a couple questions, Mark. So does the county have a means to communicate with these outside utilities that,
They use the same procedure that Steve Adams previously described.
Okay.
They all go through that procedure.
so like FP&L's subcontractor comes to do work on a county road, they go through that same process of MOT planning, I guess?
MOT planning and inspections, yes.
Okay. Do you know if the county also uses, in that MOT planning, notification to fire and police or county sheriff and county fire?
I do not know how that link occurs. I do know I previously worked at Charlotte County Public Works, there's not a direct link to the sheriff's department like there is the city, where we sit down and we meet with with the city police department all the time.
Okay.
So we keep them pretty well abreast of what's going on. This county's DRC process does not have the sheriff involved in it.
Oh.
I don't know how they keep the sheriff and everybody aware of what's going on.
So I guess while we're planning to create this, consistent SOG or SOP to include city police and fire in that, I guess, review process for road closures?
Yeah. And
Yes, most definitely.
So I think DRC would be the easiest. I mean, whether it's, it could be an administrative review via email or what, but that's why we're suggesting they go through DRC, because it's got all the links. So every department is gonna look at that road closure and see whether or not it's gonna
Yeah,
affect them or not.
that's simple enough. You simply require them to put their MOT plan in their DRC packet. And that way, all of us get to see it. Now, and this one, it would not have captured that, because that didn't go to DRC. We need a process to capture the ones that are below the threshold to go to DRC, or they're not required to go to DRC. Is, where the biggest potential for, missing them.
I've written a little something that, let me read it to you and see if it's a code revision, just an understanding, or what we might need to do. If not already done through DRC, all proposed road closures shall submit an MOT plan, work schedule, and project narrative at least 2 weeks in advance of planned work. Public Works, Police, Fire, Utilities, and School Board should be notified. We need to give them guidance for doing their public noticing. Melissa, who's here in the audience, she sends out all of our public notices, but how do we tell a contractor to get all of that same thing done on his own without putting that burden on Melissa or Public Works to receive the phone calls when this thing goes awry and all of that? I would ask Melissa, do you have any comments? Would you mind doing this? Would this be a burden to you to do this for all of the developers that might come?
I think, Melissa Reichert, Communications Manager. We had one maintenance of way company in the past that had come through our office and asked us for help with communications. And we did that, but we did get some feedback from council that, why are we doing this on behalf of the contractors? Well, it makes sense because we have the best connections out into the community and the best connections with media in a lot of cases, because we're dealing with them on a daily basis. I certainly think if they can be noticing it, but we should be noticing it as well. And in this case, we found out about a week in advance that this project was going to go on. And we knew, and that's part of it too. Staff has to be able to understand if the project is gonna cause major concerns, raise a big red flag, and we knew right away that this one was gonna do that. So that went out on a Friday night on the 14th. So the city council members were able to put that in their newsletters, and their newsletters hit more people probably than ours do. So that had been out a week in advance, it had been on Facebook, been on Nextdoor. It was highly publicized that that road was going to be closed, and we knew what a big deal that was gonna be. It wasn't until about noon on the Friday that the work was taking place that I started getting calls in my office, traffic's not moving, that kind of thing. So I don't know how much, the procedures that were put into place on Monday seem to really help the process, but I don't know how much more information would have helped. It was the process out there on the streets that seemed to be the issue that day. But as communications, I'm more than willing to play whatever role this committee would like me to play in getting the word out to the public. We just, though, need to have a process for them to go through.
Can I say
So if I may, real quick, so in, as far as setting up a procedure and making these procedures enforceable, under Chapter 20, streets, or Chapter 20, I believe, streets and sidewalks, there may need to be some revisions made, in terms of, you know, we require, we basically, we say it's unlawful for any person to do work in the right of way without a permit, but it doesn't appear that anything is enforceable within streets and sidewalks as far as requiring such a permit, which may be why we have no way of capturing these utilities and other entities in terms of what they're doing within our public rights of way. That said, when developing the procedure, 2 weeks is way too quick. You probably need 30 days, maybe even 60 days for that work, for permitting, just so that you can make sure everybody gets it. I know for DRC, it's 3 weeks basically before, or 4 weeks now before a meeting, from the time that something's submitted until it gets out to everybody, and we have time to comment back and work through the process. So we need to make sure that whatever procedures we set up, we give ourselves enough time to respond in a meaningful way, and that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're putting out fires instead of, you know, just following a normal administrative sort of process.
Well,
That's all I had to say.
I just want to add what Melissa said. You know, something like this, for it to function smoothly, it can't just be notifying the public of it. It can't just be, you know, Public Works saying, okay, that route's good. It's got to be every entity working together, just like with a parade. You need, you know, Public Works to say, well, this is the way the detour needs to go. And then you need the police and fire to confirm that emergency vehicles can get through. Do you need to have officers out there directing traffic and notifying the police? So it's just like a parade. We put out all our parades on social media, advising the public. I work with Dave Myers to get the MOT. So I you know, on my side, if we put it in place to where they have to go in front of the DRC and have it reviewed by all of us, I think we can avoid any issue that we just had.
Is there, Randy, this is for you. When a contractor builds or is going prior to building and they go and they submit their plans for permitting, is there somewhere on the form that asks the contractor, will you be working in the right of way? Will impacts to traffic occur? Is there any kind of language like that where maybe we can modify the building permit language to be inclusive?
There isn't, and I don't know what purpose it would serve to put it on the application permit, because there's nothing the building's gonna review. Board permit in that
Well,
regard.
I'm thinking it would be, okay, just a question, as a red flag to say, you know,
Well, we should have probably known about this, because I was aware, I know Public Works was, of this, this little development that was gonna, I think, include 6 sites when it was complete. And I guess there was no trigger to look to see if utilities were available. I don't know. I didn't look. We looked at the drainage.
Actually, you have, allow her to speak.
As a-
Yes,
Kathy Getz?
please.
As a homeowner who's built 2 homes here in 10 years, it seems to me that the city knows when there's going to be a sewer hookup because they charge us for that. So therefore, there's got to be some kind of procedure that you knew that there was going to be a sewer hookup here, but somehow that the disconnect was in the timing of when that sewer connection was going to be made. And so therefore, I would think that in the permitting process, in the review of that, you could red flag right there that, uh-oh, we know that we're going to have a sewer hookup or a whatever the hookup is in this area, and we know where that force or that main is and where that's got to come. I would think that it would be easily identified because you guys go over all the plans. You know where that hookup is, yeah?
Building doesn't permit utility connections.
Okay, well, that's going like this. So let's, whoever does that, let's, you know, there's got to be some kind of a procedure or some kind of a, somebody knows that that hookup's going to be made. Thank you.
Building doesn't have access to the database.
Well, that's why going in front of DRC, it's gonna be reviewed by every department. So, you know, utilities will check all their stuff, Public Works, police, you know, so that's why by making them go in front of DRC, you're gonna have every entity involved in that road closure, and you're gonna avoid any missing something.
Well, let me explain the process. When somebody wants to get water or sewer services, they first send a form or request either on the internet or in writing to our department and ask for sewer availability. Steve or Robert or whomever will review that and say, yes, it's available, no, it's not available, you have to do a line extension, whatever the case may be. And we notify them of that. Understand that can happen 3 years before they ever build the project. Okay? And a lot of times paying the impact fees can happen well in advance of them building the project. In this case, yeah, we knew that there was going to be a sewer extension happening, but they show up, you know, they come to us and we say, well, you have to go and get your MOT approved by Public Works in advance before you can start the work. We sent them to Mark, and then he goes to Mark and says, I need this done in 3 days, even though it had been approved a long time ago. So we need a minimum timetable, and I think you alluded to 30 days or whatever the case may be, to make sure, you know, that the contractors are aware, because once we start doing MOT by committee, it's going to stretch the time out considerably, and pretty soon the contractors are going to, you know, fuss about that, so be aware of that also. Yeah, I'm like you. I mean, it is what it is, but
I'd rather deal with a fussy contractor than having to answer 200 calls from our citizens about this mishap that happened, you
Right.
know? I mean, everybody's got rules they gotta follow, contractors, police,
right.
every profession has guidelines they have to follow, so.
Well,
Well, that is, you brought up a good point. One of the things about DRC projects that I also, because I review some of the construction or the drainage, what have you, and then sign off on behalf of Public Works for DRC projects, one of the things that I find sometimes difficult is that a DRC project can come through, they might get project complete plans, but we may or may not see them in construction. And we never know what that time frame is. It's like, oh, they broke ground on the Harbor Social. I didn't know that came through. I knew it was approved, but I never know when they're actually coming to construction until they're breaking ground or have broken ground.
yeah,
You know, so I don't know if there's also
So-
a way
so you
we can
can't-
improve that
right.
communication as well, from the time that a DRC project gets approved to the time that they are going to break ground, and whatever work is required to take place to build that site, that the proper communication link is in process.
So the separate permitting process would accomplish that, I would think.
Right, right. That's why you can't necessarily tie it to sewer availability or when they pay their impact fees, is the point I'm trying to make.
Yes.
Mitchell, if I could, please.
Please.
A lot of these projects are not near as intense as what we just saw. We have one currently on the a request that utilities, Public Works were discussing, the closure of McKenzie Street to divert the traffic to the side of the road. They're gonna put shell in the swale, fill the swale in, keep the road passable and have a flagman for one day. I don't see that being much of an impact on the city. They can drive one block over and get around. The fire department will certainly need to know so they don't send an engine down there on a response, but everybody else will be able to get around. We don't anticipate the diversion of the traffic to cause any delays anywhere else. Something like that, 30 days notice, going through the full DRC is going to be quite a burden, and we see a lot of those types of projects. We also see a lot of emergency projects that nobody's going to get any notice whatsoever, and they're just, we'll call fire and police and say, hey, we just had the sewer line or the drainage pipe collapse on so-and-so road, and it's going to be closed until we get it fixed. But so we just have to keep that in our minds, that not all of them are going to be as big as this Olympia Avenue, and a lot of them, 30 days notice, even 2 weeks might be a little long for them for the real simple stuff. A lot of the simple stuff y'all don't even know about because they didn't cause any impact to anyone. So we just need to keep that flexible. And if I could, I would think that at most we don't take any action today. Let's think about it, look at other communities. And if need be, maybe something along the lines of either the Public Works Director or the city engineer be the authorized agent to close roads in the city, and then that person reports to all the others that are involved in this. I know when I started here at the City of Punta Gorda, I read through all of the codes to find out what duties and responsibilities were pinned on the city engineer so that I covered all my bases. And I was very surprised to find that there was nothing like that in our codes that gave either the Public Works Director or the city engineer that authority. It seems to rest with City Council or not anyone at all. Whereas at Charlotte County, I did have that authority, and that was in the code vested to me to have that responsibility.
So then, the way you propose that, Mark, sounds good. Then would that individual also then determine what are so-called simple road closures that don't require formal review, and those that do?
That's what's happening at Charlotte County, yes. Roy makes the decision when he doesn't feel comfortable to authorize something. He shoots it up the ladder, and then his supervisor, Joanne Vernon's, the county engineer, will look around and see who else needs to get involved and pull people in. And I think their code is flexible enough that they don't have a 2-week period, but maybe, I did read some others that said they have 2 weeks to review it, except simple projects can go faster and more difficult projects can take longer. So it's basically saying 2 weeks plus or minus will determine how much time we're gonna have for review. So
Basically saying if it's a temporary flagging operation or a moving operation or something like that, that wouldn't require a formal review.
right,
Versus
just do it by
a
the,
lane closure or a road closure.
yes, just conform to FDOT's MOT plans and you're all set. And then something like Olympia, we should have probably went in front of city council and let them know what was happening before that thing got closed.
Right.
Okay. One thing not to forget is, just like what we had saw this week on Marion Avenue, when somebody comes in and puts fiber optic in the right of way, that's not being captured. So it would be nice if that was captured. Anybody that wants to work in the right of way has some kind of requirement to submit a plan, a schedule. What are we doing? Where are we doing it? Are we closing a lane? Right now, that process is not required. So whoever that contractor is, who happens to be working for CenturyLink, just shows up, puts up the cones and starts drilling. So it would be nice to have a process that at least captures, forces those people to notice
Agreed.
the city.
So that permitting process would include any lane closures?
I think any work in the right of way, and like Mark said, if it's a very simple project that conforms to DOT's Series 600 MOT, it could probably be approved administratively in a short time frame, a week or whatever. by staff, but to have no process where that contractor from who knows where just drives in and closes lanes and starts putting rods in the ground.
Because understand, look at the scope and the extent of that project. Every house, they're crossing two city lines, a water line and a sewer line. So they're either going over it, hopefully, or under it. We find in most cases, they go through it.
Well, plus they're affecting the public because people live on that street and they have driveways and they don't know anything about it.
Well, that's it. Every contractor that comes in to work in the local jurisdiction, being the city of Punta Gorda, has to call Sunshine, call before you dig for locates. So that's coming in somewhere, and then that should be some kind of formal notification. I don't know how we create that,
Has
include
nothing to
that.
do with scheduling work. It's just,
Well,
they're
yeah, it
digging and
actually-
we do a ticket and we mark our stuff and drive away. We have no idea when they're gonna show up and work.
No, I don't disagree with you, but if they're going to come to the jurisdiction, they should know and notify us somehow procedurally. I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm agreeing with you. That, they also have to notify us, because if they ding any of our utility infrastructure, that will impact us or our residents or what have you. So, yeah, we don't know. I don't know where that information is going to or through, but I think I heard several of us saying, hey, what's going on? Who's doing the conduit and bore work out there on, so.
What usually happens, and we probably have, and I'm just guessing, but I would estimate 15 to 20 a year, where a sinkhole develops on a road and we go back to fix the pipe, and Shazam, guess what? There's a piece of cable through it, or there's a piece of fiber through it, and we didn't even know anybody was working in that area.
When they should have been calling for locates to start with.
Well, they call for locates.
Well, the majority, they're better now than they used to be. Let's put it that way.
We get tickets.
Okay, so we are locating, I mean, we
Absolutely,
have
yeah,
that
okay.
responsibility to do the
We
locates.
follow the 811 rule or whatever it is, the sunshine rule.
Right.
They call for a ticket, we have 48 hours to mark, we mark, when it's marked, they go into the internet and notify the 811 system that it's properly marked. Contractor can show up anytime he wants, I think there's a time frame, but.
I think it's within 30 days.
Right.
He can, and if it's over 30 days, he calls in a new ticket.
Right.
So tickets come in, they get marked, they get confirmed, we go on to the next ticket.
And there's no
It's not a
procedure
right-of-way.
set up for anyone monitoring the
Not a
work that
right-of-way
they do
approval
within
process.
the right-of-way.
It's not a right-of-way approval process, it's a utility protection process.
No, I
So when
understand.
this fella shows up on Marion, he just shows up and closes his lane and starts digging, so anybody who happens to live on that street, wants to walk a dog, drive to the Publix, they're impacted. So I'm just suggesting, it would be nice to capture that, even if it was in a low-profile system, that could be done administratively.
Understood. Right now, we're locating, but we're going, okay, we're located, and they come in, do the work, and nobody is assigned to any of that process of what's going on, really.
Excuse me, please don't talk from the audience. If you're going to speak, speak from the podium. One thing I want to say is that I think this is all falling back on, right now in Chapter 20, there is no enforcement mechanism for issuing permits within the right-of-way. There's a pretty clear procedure in terms of constructing driveways, but beyond that, there is really nothing. It says that, there's a whole list of things that it says it shall be unlawful for anybody, person, corporation, et cetera, to do any work in the right-of-way without approval from us. It sets up a permit that has to be filed with the building division on a city-prescribed form. And I think the only one we have, again, is for the driveway connections, and prescribes a fee for that form. But as far as I can see, and I may, I'm reading this right now on the fly, I don't see any enforcement mechanism where we could stop somebody and fine them for doing that work in the right-of-way. So that's where, if we went out there and shut down the CenturyLink subcontractor right now, they would figure out what the permit process was. But we don't have the authority to do that.
We don't really
From
have a
anything
permit
I can see.
process. Yeah, right. Okay.
For the record, Kathy Getz, to Linda's point, when we built our house on McGregor Street 6 months ago, I'm the one, the homeowner calls for the sunshine. For Xfinity, I call in, put my order into Xfinity to get it in. They tell me I have to call. So there is no way you people know about that
Okay.
for the cable. And that was underground. That comes, so they come right across from the pole. And as far as I know, there was no notification because the homeowner handles that with them. They come, and the homeowner calls Sunshine. They come out and put the flags in. Xfinity, CenturyLink, whatever, comes out and does the work.
For residential purposes.
For residential purposes, yeah. And this was a residential.
Mm-hmm.
That triggers the notification process, I believe, for all the utilities, correct?
When you call 811, it notifies all utilities that are on the map for that area. Mitchell, if I may speak.
Yes,
Mark Gehring,
please.
Public Works. You had mentioned the code revision to Chapter 20. McHale is currently working on a code revision related to right-of-way permittings for some issues we were having with builders not restoring the lots next door to their houses. I think this would be a perfect opportunity to have her just include all of this into her code revision
Okay.
that she's working on.
That seems like a logical place to start in terms of making sure the rules are correct as far as developing the actual processes and procedures. Once we have laws in place, ordinances in place, then we can develop those administrative procedures to make this work more smoothly moving into the future. Do we have any other discussion on this item?
I just want, so it seems to me like the next step would be for Public Works and Utilities and any other interested parties work on a draft ordinance and come back with a draft ordinance then, when one's put together. Is that the procedure?
We need to modify 20.
What is the timeline for the
I-
modification of 20?
If this board would give that direction, I will go to Roy Benjamin at Charlotte County and fully understand their process of how they get to notify the, I know fire is part of the county, but sheriff isn't. How they notify all those folks and how they actually work with the different utilities and how the permit review is and all of that, so that I could make a recommendation of how we could follow their procedures or at least understand how other procedures work and incorporate that to how we want to do it here at the city. And report back to this board in a couple of weeks at a regular scheduled meeting.
I would agree with moving forward to give our city engineer the authorities to research and review the county's process so that we can work from that.
Second?
Okay.
Was that a motion?
We'll take that as a motion in a second.
Yes, motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Barring none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Excellent
Thank you, Mark.
discussion.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
One
Uh,
quick question. Do we have a time frame for when that, the code language is to be completed by?
I don't. I know that Mikhail has been working off and on it intermittently, but I don't know what the timeframe is.
Do we have anything intermittently that we can implement, Mark? As something comes through, as we know, there's going to be, 5 more single families? I don't know what their connections are.
Mark Gehring, Public Works. I'm a little gun shy right now, so I will be holding them off as much as I can for anything that involves any kind of traffic diversion or anything like that, and also getting everybody that's in this group that we've been talking about notification when something like this comes in. Just
To speak up, there's a couple of them that are coming through DRC, and Steve has reviewed those. One of them is going to affect Cooper Street.
So we're not familiar with any major issues like we saw
Right.
happen on Olympia in the near term. They're more typical as what we heard about. There's going to be a lane closure on McGregor, which is going to be flagged around. You mentioned McKenzie, it might have been McGregor.
Single lane closure?
Yes.
Is there one on McKenzie too?
No.
Okay, so it's
McGregor,
actually
not
gonna be on McGregor. There's gonna be a sewer service to a home added on McGregor, it's gonna require the street to be dug up, and they're gonna flag traffic around it. So these are minor cases, so I think we have some minor cases that we can handle administratively. The next major lane closure will be the 326 Cooper project, but that seems to be pretty far into the future. The engineer has quite a bit of work to do.
Are you referring to the Bella Villa or Villa Bella, whatever?
Yes,
That
that hasn't
DRC
been
project?
approved by DRC
No, it has
yet.
not.
It's
Okay.
not been approved. But if it was approved, it's gonna be a very substantial utility extension project, which will influence traffic and lane closures.
Okay,
But that seems to be
that hasn't been approved yet.
many, many months away.
Okay, maybe by then code 20 will be revised.
There you go.
Bill, if I
Randy,
could-
oh,
Go ahead.
on the note we were speaking of previously, when we talked about the DRC projects and their timeline, because sometimes it can go 1, 2, 3, 4, however many years it takes to come to construction. Is there a way that you could possibly flag us when one comes to construction? Because like I said, I didn't know Harbor Social. There's been a couple others. I don't know that they're here until they're here. That you could flag us when they come through?
Yes, we will attempt to. I don't want to assume full responsibility for doing that because I have no mechanism in place for doing that.
Okay, not even by like a modification to a permit number or something that would indicate that it's a DRC project?
No.
No?
not
Okay.
that way. But I
All
will
right.
do what I can.
I would
and I'll
appreciate
let
that,
you know.
thank you.
But in the interim, Mark, if you could give me some contact information, you can do a blanket email to all the contractors. We have that in a database, that any type of road closures require at least notification and/or approval.
Sooner than later.
Just maybe a stopgap right now or anything.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're asking me for what?
I could put out a blanket email to all the contractors that are registered in the city, that any road or lane closures require administrative approval or notification if you give me a contact for that.
Being myself?
You want it? I mean, that's.
Yeah, I guess I'm taking that on, yeah.
Okay, then I'll do that and I'll copy you on that.
I hate to get police involved and, say it's their responsibility when a lot of these don't even get to that level, so, yeah.
Okay, so I'll put together an email and copy you on that.
Anything else? All right, unfinished business, we have none. Staff comments? Anybody? I think we've said enough today. Citizen comments, any additional citizen comments?
Kathy Getz, I want to thank all of you. I think, that I wasn't here last week, but I stay pretty connected with what's going on, so I read all the stuff. And, I think you all do a great job. And the only reason I come to these meetings, because I think you need a little bit of citizen input. And hopefully it's helpful. Thank you. And the only other comment I have is, I think there should be minutes 2 weeks after a meeting. I think that's pretty long to wait for minutes. Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.